So the story is that we're launching from is that of Rebekah Baptiste. She was murdered, and her father and girlfriend have been arrested in that murder. Now, remember, innocent until proven guilty. However, there were multiple calls to child services prior to this murder. There were allegations of sexual abuse. There were allegations of torture, toenails being torn off, these sorts of things. And so we kind of question why didn't DCS intervene? Now, Joe, I know you had thoughts on this initially when you first saw the story. You went, wait a minute, why are we just simply blaming the government for it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's fair for you to say that.
Why are we just bagging on DCS here? Because...
But I asked you, who else should we bag on?
Well, obviously, first and foremost, Dad.
100% with you.
Here,
with you.
And girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like, come on. You're a dad. This is your kid.
Yeah.
Talk about as inhumane as you can get.
And what kind of a crap childhood did they have to pass this on to the next generation?
But when I first heard about this, you could have told me DCS had 400 people working for it, and I would have said, yeah, that sounds right.
All right, so you're thinking understaffed, how can they possibly respond?
Then I learned DCS has 4,000 employees, which I was like, whoa, okay. Doesn't tell me too much, but how many of those 4,000 are caseworkers? How many serve in other capacities? But that struck me as, okay, we're not dealing with a lack of staffing at DCS, at least in terms of raw numbers. But I also thought, hey, this has to rise to the level of other legislatures and the governor as well. I mean, she was a social worker. Shouldn't she be involved? I mean, she's
well. I mean, nobody's calling the governor for individual cases.
No, but when we see kids dying, who DCS was aware of, I would like to think that the governor has picked up the phone and says, hey, what's going on here, DCS? How's this happening?
So you're asking the governor to prioritize this, is what I'm hearing. You're saying the governor, you would think that the governor, being a social worker, this would touch her and she would prioritize this.
This one, and I know we're going to mention a little bit later as well, there's been some other cases as well.
So you're asking her to prioritize? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
All right. If, in fact, you felt like DCS was understaffed, they would have to prioritize the calls that they get, right?
No doubt.
If you have someone who's had 12 phone calls and from qualified individuals, including teachers who are trained to recognize signs, from parents or neighbors, and from a school resource officer who, again, is qualified. I mean, that's a pretty good witness on the stand if you need one.
And I think had been out to the property, too, in the case of the SRO.
Yes, and saw the child with a black eye. Doesn't that rise up your priority list?
I would think so.
Okay, so even if they were understaffed, this case sure seems like it should have taken a higher priority.
No doubt.
Okay.
And DCS admits that, like you said, whether the number was 5 or 12 or 13, DCS admits that they had received calls, but that only one of them had risen to their, I don't want to marginalize their words, but their threshold to actually take some action.
So why is it not going to get any better? And I have a couple of thoughts on this. First, I think we have some systemic problems because we've had some of these issues since before child services, back when it was child protective services. Some of these issues are the same.
So they go back to, what was that, 2013, 2014, when
2014
the change was made from CPS to DCS?
Yeah. So some of it is there. Some of it is this, that DCS put out a statement. And in that statement, they laid out, hey, it sucks. We're really sorry. That's bad.
We knew about this girl.
We did. But also, they kind of made some excuses like, we didn't get 13 calls. We only got 5. So that, to me, is a little bit problematic.
Yep.
They also tried very hard to shift blame. Now, here's where I'm sort of split on what they had to say. First of all, I can't stand when people try to shift responsibility to someone else.
How do you feel like they shifted blame, or who do you feel like they shifted it to?
To the legislature. 100%. I'm going to share with you exactly why, in their own words, their statement.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were trying to shift blame, rather than saying, not good enough, here's what we're doing. I want to see solutions, right? I don't want to see finger pointing. And so I absolutely cannot stand when anybody says, it wasn't me, it was them. It wasn't me, it was them. It wasn't me, it was them. I mean, unless we're talking about me yelling at my kids and saying to my daughter, you broke the lamp, and she goes, no, my brother did, and come to find out it was the brother, like, that's fair. Like, she literally didn't do it. But in this case, DCS, you're in charge of the safety of these children, and you even say your top priority is their safety. Is it?
That's sure a classic governmental tactic, though, of it's so sprawling, and you've constantly got the fingers pointing in all kinds of directions.
And it doesn't help that you got two different branches of government working here. So you've got the legislative branch that is writing the laws, and then you've got the executive branch, DCS in this case, cabinet-level position that is enforcing the laws. And what the DCS did in their report when responding to the death of Rebekah Baptiste, they said, in report criteria, which was established by the legislature, and they give the statute, the allegation must also state that the parent's conduct has either harmed the child or puts the child at substantial risk of harm. This language was changed by the legislature from unreasonable risk of harm to substantial risk of harm in 2022. So they're already saying, wait a minute, we went from unreasonable risk of harm, in other words, is it above normal, like this kid could get hurt, to this kid will get hurt. And they're claiming that the legislature changed the language, and so it's the legislature's fault.
I'm with you. That's what they're trying to do. But I don't give them a pass on that because you and I mentioned this little girl had been reported to have had a black eye at one point. She had had toenails ripped off of her. I mean, that doesn't just happen to a kid. So when they say that their standard was changed, I still feel like, okay, that means that the kid has been harmed here. Little Rebekah had been harmed.
Yeah. So how do you prove that she's going to be harmed again? Because that's the other thing DCS said. They said, under the safety assessment model, which came from the legislature, the children must be in present or impending danger, and there must be no other way to remedy safely that concern other than removal from the home. And then it goes on to how they have to interview the victims and the perpetrators, but if any of them don't want to participate in the interviews and the investigation, basically that's it. You can't compel someone to talk to the police or to DCS in this case. So you can't even make them talk to the police.
So you're telling me if dad or girlfriend, whoever they show up and try to talk to, who's the parent in the room, if they say, hey, I'm not talking to you, DCS just says, well, case closed. We can't do anything?
Kind of. That's basically what they said. I agree.
That's pathetic. And to me, how years ago did they not sit down with the cops and go, hey, if we get stonewalled by an authority figure here, we need to show back up with you and knock on a door and order them to answer some questions. Or at that point, we show up and do what we don't want to do and take a child away.
I mean, it's basically this weird ollie oxen free. Like, hey, if you can beat your kids, and if DCS shows up, just say, I don't want to talk to you, and then they can't do anything.
Or what if you don't even answer the door?
Yeah, okay. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I mean, either this is the lamest excuse I've ever heard, or it is the worst law that's ever been written.
Imagine being a caseworker, Chris, and imagine you show up and you knock on a door, and you are there to look into the well-being of a little 10-year-old girl, which you've gotten reports that terrible things have happened.
Yes.
And you don't have a parent come to the door. How sick do you feel that night when you go to bed? I
mean, how do we ever prosecute child abuse if you can't actually prosecute child abuse?
Right.
Right? How does that happen? So, I mean, at some point, either DCS is not giving us the whole story, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? Our hands are tied. Or we've been doing it all wrong all along.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that happens.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe, and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.